We've had a technical difficulty. Thank you for your patience, and we'll pass back over to you, Adrian.
Thank you. All right, so I'll just do a very quick recap on this slide, parts that I've done. So just a very broad overview of the mass valuation system we use in New South Wales, where we group like properties in an LGA into components. So our components are our groups of properties that move in a similar direction. Each component will have one primary benchmark, which is a property we feel is representative of the majority of the properties in that particular component. We also will pick out some reference benchmarks so that we're testing different parts of the full spectrum of values in that particular component. So we pull properties from the upper quartile, we pull properties from the lower quartile, and we also will have some benchmarks spread across different localities if it's a widely dispersed component. A really large part of what we do on a day-to-day basis is sales analysis. So our valuers are continually monitoring the market, looking at the sales, making inquiries into the sales to determine if they're good representatives of what is happening in the market. Talking to agents, solicitors, conveyancers, town planners, lots of different people that are relevant to the market activity that is happening. In terms of doing our actual valuations, the primary benchmark is the one that the valuation is placed upon, and that will help us determine what's happening in that particular component in an up and down direction. So, if the primary benchmark is valued higher than what it was last year, then what happens is that component will be brought up, subject to a review of the full spectrum of values in that particular component. We do have a look at different groups and just make sure they're all moving how we think they should be when paired up with the sales evidence. So once we've done our valuations, we generally finish that process in October. We actually have a quality assurance team, and they run a whole range of quality assurance measures against our valuations. They run various programs through the year, targeted QA programs. The system that we've got in New South Wales has been ranked equal first in the world in terms of quality. So really good system, and we thrive for constant improvement in the system. Simone, I'll get you to jump to the next slide if we could. So just a little bit of an overview of our QA. Value New South Wales conducts an annual audit program to assess our valuation quality. Rating and Tax and QA team ensures valuations meet high standards and are applied consistently through New South Wales. The team uses a data-driven, targeted approach alongside core activities such as responding to customer inquiries. And that is something that we really pride ourselves on at Value New South Wales. We've got a really good customer care team, always there and available to take inquiries from the public when they come up. We've got formal audit processes and specific valuation review processes across the state. We've got a range of statistical parameters that we check our values through. So that's done not only when the values are being completed by our valuers, but also through our QA team as well. And recommendations are made via our QA team throughout the year just to improve the processes along the way for both internal staff and valuation contractors that we use. Over to the next slide, Simone. So a little bit of an overview, high-level view of Snowy Valleys LGA. There's a little over 9,000 properties in our database. Total land value is 4,190 million. That was up by 1.9% overall from 2024 through to 2025. And drivers in the market, and these are the things that our staff are picking up during the sales analysis process, is that the market has stabilized after the pandemic, which was a pretty strong period of market activity generally right across the state in most areas. some more difficult economic circumstances being experienced, and changes in seasonal conditions, interest rates, and lifestyle factors that buyers are looking for in different areas. So just on to the next slide. So this slide here gives us an overview of what's happened in the different market segments from the 2024 valuation through to 2025. So values are done each year, but they're provided to council at least 3 yearly. So this is comparing the 24s to the 25s. Residential had a slight uptick of 1.9%. Commercial 5% increase, industrial 8.3%. Industrial through the state's been a pretty strong market performer. Rural slight increase overall at 1.7%, and our other land categories at 4.9%. So slight overall increase at just below 2% across the LGA. So off to the next slide. The next slide looks at our movement from back in 2022 through to 2025. So what's happened in that period of time. Residential's performed quite strongly at 14%. Commercial at 5%, industrial at 29%. Again, bit of a standout performer. That's a pretty common theme through many parts of the state. Rural at 8.9%, and other land categories at 17%. So that averages in at just under 10%. So we'll just move to the next slide. So this is just a slide just to outline the sales analysis we've done over the last 12-month period to help support our 2025 land values. As I say, a really big part of our role is looking at the sales and getting an understanding of what the market's doing, what buyers are paying for different types of real estate. We're continually looking into, why are buyers buying particular parcels of land? Where are they buying? Where are they coming from? We're continually looking at all those aspects. So for the residential market, we analysed 82% of sales, so quite a high proportion of sales in the residential markets. Commercial and industrial, we try and do 100% wherever possible. Rural's not far behind at 94%, so we've analysed 66 of the 70 available sales in the rural market, and in the other category we also did 100%. So overall, about 86% of the sales were looked at by our valuers to help us support the land values that we've written.
So Adrian, what would be in the other categories? What sort of properties?
Can we ask those when the questions are on?
Okay.
Sorry, otherwise we won't get through.
No problems. Yep, we'll wait till the end. That's no problems. So objections. This is a fairly important aspect of the process. It is a mass valuation system, so it's recognised that from time to time people will disagree with the valuation that's been placed on their land, and that's what the objections process is there for people to have that opportunity to object to their land value, and for an independent person to come along and assess that as a single parcel to determine that land value. So landowners and councils can object to issued land values within 60 days of receipt of notice of valuation. We know for Snowy Valleys that's been extended out a little bit to give a little bit more time for objections, so that's closing on Thursday. Objections are undertaken by an independent valuer that wasn't involved in the original valuation. Preliminary report is issued to the landowner, who can then make further submissions on errors of fact before the matter is finalised. In some circumstances, an informal conference can be arranged. And then if the owner is dissatisfied with the outcome of the objections process, there is the appeal. There is the appeal opportunity to the Land and Environment Court. So the little table on the right-hand side, we've just done a little bit of a snapshot of the number of objections we've had. So far, for the 1 July 25 values, we've had 34 objections to date, recognising there's still some time for people to object, so that number might climb a little. 24 and 23, they were land tax years. So in land tax years, you don't tend to get nearly as many objections because not as many people get a notice of valuation. And then we just put in there for comparison the 2022, which was the last general valuation cycle. We had 28 objections in that year, of which 12 were allowed and 16 were disallowed. And that's that's in the context of around 9,391 properties that are in the database. That little red button there, we won't play it now just because of time, but that is an animation that is on the Valuer General's website. There are a few really good animations available. Provides an insight into how valuations are done, the objections process, and other relevant things to people who are interested. So I'd really encourage people that are interested to go onto the Valuer General's website. A lot of work was put into it over the last couple of years to improve accessibility and the content, and there is a lot of really good content on there for people to have a look at. So just moving forward to the next slide. So again, just reiterating, a lot of this is on the website. We try and be as transparent as possible. We're trying to get as much information out into the public domain so that people have the information at their fingertips. So again, would just really encourage anybody that's interested to jump around on the internet and have a look at the Valuer General's webpage. If you need assistance at any time, we've got a really good customer care team. That's a really successful team with a lot of good outcomes. The phone number there at the bottom of the slide will get you through to that customer care team. And then, they'll be more than happy to assist or triage the inquiry out to the relevant department that it needs to go to. Just moving on to the next slide. What we did for today is we noted that there were a couple of areas of specific interest. So we just pulled out a couple of areas. So what you're seeing on the left there is a big part of the way we do our valuations is through the use of mapping and thematic layers. So we've just pulled up this area here. If you have a look at the legend on the left, it shows all of that green are properties that have, either remained stable or had a small increase of up to 10% between the 24 and the 25 year. So that's most of those properties were zoned RU1 in that area. And we'll just flip forward to the other area that we had, Tuma. Again, these values generally remain stable with the ones either side, looking at slight increases. Again, there was another area zoned RU1 that had come up as an area of interest. So we just sort of thought we'd showcase, just one of the ways that we look at the values once they're done is through our thematic layering and mapping systems that we have. Okay, just moving on to pine plantations. So we've had a few queries around the pine plantations and methods of valuation. So with the pine plantations, they're also done through a mass appraisal system. In Snowy Valleys, we actually have two components of pine plantations. Some of the pine plantations are in the RU1 zone, others are in the RU3. So we actually have those separated because all of our valuations are separated per zoning. That's how our system runs. So again, the pine plantations are grouped into components. We're looking at any sales evidence available to value the primary benchmark and also to value reference benchmarks in the component. And we're also looking at things like, location, quality of the land, topography, what the access is like, surrounding land uses, and transport. So just all of the aspects that we would use with other land classifications also applies to the pine plantations in terms of doing our valuations. And we're not just limited to sales within Snowy Valleys. For specialised asset classes, we will look wider than just the LGA because buyers of this type of thing tend to consider areas outside of a specific location, which is also the case with a lot of rural localities. We find buyers, particularly new buyers to an area, they will generally cast their net quite wide in terms of their search. Some buyers will be limited to a particular geographic location, but a lot of buyers will have a fairly wide area that they'll consider. So yeah, again, looking at all the sales evidence, valuing the primary benchmark, and applying those values through the component. And sorry, just on the remaining on the pine plantations, given it's come up as a bit of a question, as I said before, we do have targeted QA projects, so it's something that we will look at incorporating into our targeted QA projects as an additional project for the year, because we do pick out areas that are raised to us, or if there are any objection hotspots, we tend to move those onto a bit of a review just to make sure we're comfortable with how things are sitting, and to give it the attention that it needs, if it needs any further attention. So that's it for the slide pack. Did we
Adrian, thank you for condensing that down. That's excellent.
That's okay.
I might ask councillors if they've got any questions now. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Thompson.
I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. When you're going through and you're identifying the different categories, and there's a whole section of properties when you've gone residential, commercial, industrial, what would be some of the other properties that would be included within the evaluations that you do?
Yeah, sure. Luke or Kirk, I'm happy to answer this, but if one of you would like to answer, more than happy to.
Yeah, I can answer that. So yeah, the other categories which are outside the mainstream categories of residential, commercial, industrial and rural, we tend to put them in the other category because they're reflective of something that's not mainstream, and it generally covers the C1, C2 and RU3 properties. Does that answer your question?
No.
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 You've told me that you've got other properties, but you haven't told me what sort of, for example, is it a recreational area?
Oh, conservation.
It would include a national park, for example, or environmental management. And an RU3 property would tend to include forestry properties, particularly those owned by the state, for example, or by.
Well, that's a good following question. So
thank you, Kurt.
So that brings to the next part. If national park and forestry are deemed that they don't actually contribute rates to us, so why is the land actually valued? So we don't get any rateable income from forestry, state forest, or private forest, but state forest, and certainly not national parks. So how does the land value of those impact on everybody else's rates when they don't contribute to council's rateable income?
That's an interesting question. Essentially, those properties are owned by the good people of New South Wales, and therefore, if they're taxed, who would be paying the rates and land taxes on those properties? It would be the people of New South Wales. So it doesn't make sense for the New South Wales government to tax the properties owned by the good people, essentially, and it's all part of legislation as well. And it's a process of just pushing those ones aside and focusing on those properties owned by private interests for the payment of rates and taxes.
Councillor Hayes.
Just a comment on that. You realise that over 60% of our LGA is unrateable because it's national parks and forestry. So
sure, absolutely,
that puts us in a very difficult position. I just want to give you a scenario. So if you've got, say, 500 hectares grazing property, but half of it is dedicated to a pine plantation, can you expect that half that property would be valued at a quarter of the pine side of it? Would that be valued at a quarter of what the grazing side is? And then should you then clear fell your pine plantation, will that mean that the value of it will go up commensurate with the grazing side?
No, first of all, from the outset, a pine plantation is an improvement. So we deal with unimproved land value. So we would discount the value of a pine plantation if we came across a sale of a plantation to bring it back to land value. And for the purposes of that particular example as well, we would value that whole property in terms of its land capabilities. So we would assess that in terms of its classification as to whether it's cultivation, whether it's open grazing land, whether it's timber grazing land, or whether it's heavily timbered. So we would value those individual classifications on a rate per hectare and then summate those values to form the value for that particular property. So it's all based around capability and land use, if that answers your question.
Not really, but
Thank you, Kirk. So just following on Councillor Hayes' question, Adrian, you said something which I thought was very positive, that you have targeted, is it growth projects or targeted projects?
Quality assurance projects.
Oh, yes, QA projects, great. Okay, and obviously you've picked up the vibe that there are people here worried about the pines, and now that I realise it's a component that can be from throughout the state that can affect the land value, I'm getting a better understanding. I think personally we would love that to be a targeted QA project. Can we write and ask for that to happen, or if there's lots of objections put forward that might put us up on the ladder?
I don't think you'd even need to write for it to be considered. I think the fact that it's been raised as a concern is probably enough for us to consider it. I've had discussions with my manager, and you know, we've sort of noted it's been raised as a concern, so we will be looking to push that through to our QA team as a targeted project.
Oh, very grateful for that. Thank you.
No problems.
Any other?
Sorry, I may be a bit slow. Just going on Councillor Hayes' question. If there were two properties of 100 hectares, in all respects, absolutely identical, but on different titles and owned by different people, next door to each other, same land capability, same carrying capacity, but one was under private pine and one was under sheep or grey or cropping, would or should those two be valued at exactly the same value by your methodology, or would they not be valued at the same value because the one under pine would be compared to a completely different set of sales not relating to the locality of, because there weren't as many or something like that? I'm just trying to work out why there wouldn't
It's a different component.
be the same value for two identical parcels of land, because that seems to be the concern that's coming from the Manus Valley area, in my understanding of it.
Yeah, given the use of those properties, they would be located in different components. The highest and best use of the property with a pine plantation would be considered against sales of other properties with pine plantations, and the property with the grazing property would be considered against other properties of grazing properties, so sales. So it's a case of just splitting those up and realising that the different markets at play and considering the sales evidence at a component level to continue to determine the rate of change from one base date to the next. But if they're exactly the same in terms of soil capability, soil topography, shape and area, size, well then, if the other one wasn't put to an alternate use as the pine plantation, well then they would be in the same component, being both grazing properties. So it depends on their use.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Use and historical use, yeah.
Yeah.
But sorry, can I just? But don't you say it's unimproved land value? So surely use,
nothing to do with
putting it under pine is an improvement. I mean, it's the unimproved value. I mean, I have a house, and the neighbour next door on the same size block might have 3 times the quality house, but if our land's exactly the same parcels, they would have the same value, rateable value. I just don't see why the having trees on them would change the nature of the value for an unimproved value.
In that regard,
And this,
under section 6A1 of the Valuation Land Act, every property is valued as it has at its highest and best use, despite its current use, which may not reflect its highest and best use. If you had a plantation planted on a grazing property, we would consider that not to be a highest and best use. So ideally, it would be in a grazing component, but given the existence of the plantation, we would definitely put that in a forestry component.
There's also
It's
the
grazing.
considerations of a block that might have been under forestry, has been felled. If someone wanted to return that land to grazing, there would be a time and cost aspect to that. So that's part of our analysis process in terms of reviewing sales of past pine plantation sites, which we do, and seeing what people have paid for sites that have been under pine plantation, and just reviewing, what are they doing with the land? And in some cases, they're returning it to another use. There is a time and cost aspect to doing that.
Thank you. Councillor Wirtz, you had a question?
There's a couple of parts to my question. The first is a clarification with the zoning between rural RU1 land and forestry land. When you look at valuations, are you directly saying that if RU1 land, you would assume that's for cropping or grazing, and forestry land's for obviously pine plantation? If someone's using forestry land for grazing and vice versa, how is that clarified? What's the time period? Like you say, is it every 3 years? Do you clarify what the land use is on that, referencing what the zoning is? And the second part to that question, going off the zoning, because there's a number of questions relating to sort of most notably probably RU1 land around the entire LGA. So comparing, valuations from Tumbarumba to Tumut, and saying that the valuations vary greatly compared to, in terms of like dollars per hectare. How can you explain the discrepancy between those valuations when they be most notably probably getting the same output of that land if they're grazing sheep or if they're cropping that land? If per hectare base, why is there such a discrepancy in those valuations?
Okay, I can
Sorry for the long
answer
question.
those questions. Going forward, we have a verification process where we systematically check each value for that particular category on a rolling schedule. We give certain properties risk ratings, like, for example, rural is classified as a risk rating 2. It has to be verified and checked individually every 3 years on a 5-year cycle. So we determine whether that property has changed. It may have been put to an alternate use, so we should be aware of that. There could be some planning considerations as well that have changed, so we take into account that. So we regularly check these properties in accord with their risk rating. And secondly, to answer the other part of your question, is the fact that we value properties in components. We take into account local sales to determine that rate of change between one base date and another. And often we have regard to the drivers. We do have regard to the drivers in that market. They can be macroeconomics, such as interest rates. They can be microeconomics, such as commodity prices. And they can, of course, be seasonal. So seasonal conditions in Snowy Valley vary quite considerably. In the south, for example, you've got a lot of granite-based soils, which is suitable for grazing. And the north, you've got a lot of red loamy soils, which may be suitable for orcharding, for example. So we have to take into account the different markets to determine our different components and use sales which are relevant to those particular markets to determine the change from one period to the next. And also in terms of rainfall, I believe the southern sections of Snowy Valleys receives more rainfall off the western slopes of the Great Dividing Range compared to the northern areas. So we have to take into account a lot of drivers in the market, and that generally determines the sales evidence. We follow the sales as determined by the market, what purchasers are willing to pay and what sellers are willing to accept. And that determines the rate of change. And it's a very transparent process in regards to looking at the evidence available in the benchmark component report to determine the rate of change for that particular component going forward. Does that answer your question?
Well, it raises something. Certainly, the Upper Murray's been in drought for quite a time, and the rainfall's been very disappointing there.
Yeah,
So
last question.
those comments would upset a lot of people.
Yeah, but
Second thing
her
also,
thanks for being
That's in
so
general.
transparent about that. We appreciate that.
but the other thing is, in my lifetime, an enormous amount of it, former Tumut Shire Council, Tumbarumba, Grady Hume, has been some of the finest grazing land we had has been taken for forestry. So some of that high rainfall, high producing country has all gone to forestry. So I'm not sure whether you're aware of that.
Thank you. And I think we better leave it there, and you've been very generous with your time. Can I probably back to you, Adrian, just confirm that objections can be now put into Thursday, the 26th of March. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. I think an email went to council last week confirming that date, but my recollection is Thursday the 26th is the closing date.
I thank you and your whole team and your CEO, Stuart McLaughlin, for putting this together today. Thank you.
No problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Have a good afternoon,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Councillors, we'll now start the meeting. Start with the acknowledgement of country. Snorri Valleys Council proudly acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of this land and water and pay respects to their elders past and present. This meeting is live streamed on Council's website to allow the community to follow Council debates and decisions. Members of the public participating in a meeting agree to have their image, voice and personal information, including name and address, recorded and publicly broadcast. Snorri Valleys Council does not accept liability for any defamatory remarks or inappropriate comments that are made during the course of a meeting. Any part of the meeting that is held in closed session will not be streamed. Councillors are reminded of the oath or affirmation of office they made under section 233A of the Local Government Act 1993 and the obligation of the Council's Code of Conduct to disclose and appropriately manage conflicts of interest. Please ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting, and no recording of voice or images is permitted by mobile phones or other electronic devices while in the room. In the event of emergency, please evacuate the building using the nearest exit and following the instructions given by the warden. Do not use the lift. So we'll go straight to the leave of absences. We've got two there, one from myself for the 16th of April, maybe, and David Sheldon from the 4th to the 26th of June. Including the 18th of June ordinary council meeting. Do I have movers for that? Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Hardwick. All those in favour? Thank you. Now the declarations of pecuniary interests, we have three. First one is Councillor Packard declaring a non-significant pecuniary interest in relation to report 11.5 being the chair of the CUC, and will leave the meeting during the discussion. Councillor John Larter, who is declaring a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in relation to report 12.3 because he owns an aircraft involved in the display and will leave the meeting during the discussion. Councillor Julia Ham, non-significant pecuniary interest in relation to report 11.5 due to being enrolled at the Country University Centre. And Councillor James Hayes declared a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in relation to 11.5 due to being a board member on the CUC. Thank you very much. And confirmation of the minutes, 5.1. Oh, yep, we better move it, sorry. Councillor.
And just a clarification, I'm remaining in the room, not.
Oh, yeah, you said you were leaving there. I thought that was a bit strange. Yeah, we'll remain in the room. Okay. Moved by Councillor Sheldon, seconded by Councillor Hardwick. All those in favour?
I have a problem with the minutes.
We're not at the minutes yet.
Sorry, I thought.
Pecuniary interest. Okay.
Correction.
Correction. Okay. Okay. And now we're on to 5.1, the minutes of the ordinary council. Do I have a mover? Councillor Sheldon, seconded by Councillor Packard. Councillor Sheldon.
I have, well, a correction in it. It says, there was 3 people that, spoke for the motion, which were councillors Ham, Hayes and Larter. Councillor Ham,
I was against the motion.
Thank
and
you.
I apologise if I didn't make that clear.
So which item?
item
5.1,
5.1.
and it was
The request for the
9.1.
The wind turbines. Page
14.
13. Thank you for the pickup.
It's all right.
Okay, all those in favour? With that correction? Unanimous. You good? Yep. Thank you. Now on to 6, correspondence and petitions. We have none. 7.1, Merrill Minute. Just before we start on that, I just do want to thank a number of community groups, particularly the James Hayes and his work with the Kosciuszko Heritage
Kosciuszko.
Kosciuszko, and highlighting Cześlewski's
Zelensky.
walk from Ellerslie up to the top of Kosciuszko. Fabulous day, great work by the Polish community, and a very happy day celebrating the joint communities there. Yesterday there was a community reading day which was held in Tumbarumba. All schools were involved. Congratulations to all the Snorri Valley staff involved. It was outstanding. To the people involved in the Valmar Seniors Day at the Hugh Packard Auditorium last week, congratulations. Very positive day. It was nice to see the council involved there. And thank you to the Business Snorri Valleys and Snorri Valleys Council and the Tumbarumba Chamber of Commerce for their work with International Women's Day. They were all very good events. Now we have a Merrill Minute noting the address.
Councillor Sheldon.
I beg your pardon.
Just councillor Hayes qualification, Strzelecki trial.
Yeah, same guy.
Yeah, no, that's Strzelecki.
Except we have to
It didn't
learn how to
say what,
say
Strzelecki.
Strzelecki and Kosciuszko.
Kosciuszko.
Oh, no,
We had the ambassador there and she's quite determined she's going to change all Australia to say it properly.
growing up in Canberra, now it's Strzelecki.
Like Sharon.
Okay, moving on to the Merrill Minute about community concerns, revaluations in the Snorri Valleys Council area. I'd just like to make an amendment on the first one, which was note the address to the 19th of March public forum from the New South Wales General Representative, rather than Mr. Stuart
You say my phone is.
McLaughlin, and add a point that send the questions from council through to CEO to be answered where appropriate and sent out to interested parties.
You just reread that. Yeah.
Send the questions from council through to CEO to be answered where appropriate and on sent to the interested parties.
Sorry.
On sent. Yeah. To the interested, to interested parties. And I will say thank you for the presentation, and they obviously had read the questions and answered to a lot of those questions, so very much appreciated. Do I have a seconder? Don't need a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you. 8.1, notice of motion with Transport New South Wales heavy vehicle safety awareness campaign across Snorri Valleys local government area. Now, this is a motion put forward by Councillor Thompson
I'd like to move that way. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
and a seconded by Councillor Sheldon. Councillor,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I would actually like to thank the director, Mr. Mitchell, and staff who have provided the background information to go into this. It's becoming more and more evident when we look at this $25 billion worth of renewable projects across the region, and many of those involve the large vehicles. The statistics speak for themselves when you actually look in here. And I know that when the mayor and I went for the tour of the HumeLink East, it was acknowledged that a lot of the drivers also are not used to rural driving. So they come into our regions, they're not used to the animals, they're not used to narrow rural roads and a lot of the other issues. A lot of the roads in rural areas also don't even have the centre line, so people just travel straight down the middle. There are so many issues, and road safety is such a critical part of what's happening. And we have billions of dollars worth of projects being undertaken over the next couple of years. We've already had Snowy 2.0. And while the incidents may not necessarily be created by the truck drivers themselves, the issue is that the other vehicles, the motion that is created by these large vehicles usually ends up not well for those other vehicles, despite the fact that the trucks may not have caused them. I think that this is an appropriate notice of motion for us to move. It also identifies that we want this to be an ongoing point within our local traffic forums, and also that it is going to be a program specifically designed with Snowy Valleys in. So with that, I would just like to move.
Councillor Hayes.
Look, just like to thank Councillor Thompson for this, and also add that a couple of things. I think we should be logging all the accidents and near misses that HumeLink are having, because there've been some,
There have been some.
and no one knows, like they're not in the paper or anything like that. They're just sort of
On Facebook.
they're on Facebook, yeah. So I think that needs to be
Could I
need to
just
be aware of that.
ask the Director of Infrastructure, are they logged? Any accidents?
They're raised with us, and our road safety officer does keep a record of it, but yeah, I think we should be officially logging those more accurately with that HumeLink and the police and Transport for New South Wales, and bringing that to the traffic forum.
Yeah, so there was a truck and dog on the up here at the on the Link Road. There was a water tanker at Adjunbilly and what else. I came back from Wagga today. It took an enormous amount of time because there was so much traffic on the on the road, and most of it's involved with them heavy vehicles. People going slow because they don't know where they're going. Yes, it's terrible. The other point I'd like to make is just in the background of it, it says that there's $25 billion worth of capital investment being rolled out for the renewable energy. How would it be if we had 1% of that? 1% of that, that's $250 million. This is what we need to be doing. This is what we need to be doing, not just for our community, but for all communities in Australia. We need to be on the front foot of this. We're way behind, and these things keep rolling out. We are the have to put up with it all going through our area, and it's just not acceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes.
Yeah.
Certainly, talking to Councillor Hayes about driving down the Link Road at the moment, and when you can see the towers being put in there, really, it is
Confronting.
very confronting. Good word. Councillor Larter.
I support it, but by the same token, I'd like to see that there's some outcomes that are actually going to make a difference, rather than some third party getting some funding to create some death by PowerPoint for people who won't even watch it, or whatever goes on in these tick the box organisations, because that's what happened. They'll put them online and they'll say, yeah, they've done the course. And, at the end of the day, maybe, that money might be better off going into making the roads safer, or better signage, or
More passing lanes.
whatever, as opposed. So I think it's very important.
Yeah.
But
I think it's a good
needs to be
start.
targeted properly.
Okay, all those in favour?
Oh, Madam Mayor, can I just?
Oh, of course you can. I beg your pardon.
Thank you. I hear very much what people are saying around the room. I think we need to understand that this is a starting point. My understanding is whether it's next Wednesday, the 25th, or the following week on the 30th.
It's the 30th.
It's the 30th.
It's the 30th.
Right. Okay, there is a forum from Traffic for New South Wales. I think what we need to really be pushing here is that one, to at least get it in the agenda for every traffic forum, and we do have a representative from Traffic for New South Wales on that actual committee, or forum, should I say. But it is so much more than that. Last year at the National General Assembly, I attended the driver safety and session on it. There's driver frustration. We do not have overtaking lanes. We don't even have areas to be able to pull off the roads. They talk about putting up guardrails and barriers. All of that does is it congests the traffic into one area. You have nowhere to go. I see this as an absolute starting point. It's not the be all and end all of road safety, but the program is also to make our local motorists aware that they need to be mindful that they're sharing the road now with these incredibly big trucks on a regular basis. But it also comes down to the fact that we're only getting enough money to basically maintain the roads to a point so that they will be returned as they were before they started. The significance of these vehicles on the road now is enormous, and if possible, I think we should also be looking at the opportunity to renegotiate what is happening, because the impact on people living in the areas and other road users is significant. This is a starting point, not the end.
Thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous. No urgent business without notice. Governance and financial reports. We go to the council resolution action report. Page
Question
30.
Questions
with
with
notice.
notice? Questions with notice?
Page 28.
8.2.
Usually
Yeah.
it's just included in the business.
You know,
We don't read this out.
We don't have to read those out, do we?
Cool.
No. Thank you for the answer, sir. Yes, so the recommendation to note the report on council resolution action as of March 26, moved by councillor Sheldon, seconded by councillor Hardwick. Councillor Sheldon.
Yes, look, there's one on there that I think we should take off hold, and with the way what we're going to be presented later on in this meeting with the budgets, the preliminary budgets, I think we should take the notice of motion, read the productivity and cost savings plan. Now that the de-amalgamation and that has gone through its referendum and we've passed that little hurdle, we take it off on hold. And we really start looking at cost saving when we go back, and we'll come up later on the budget and the deficits in the budget. The general managers and her staff work on those cost saving.
And why are we talking about that? Could we have the general manager just give a quick update on how the de-amalgamation's going? What steps have happened in the last month?
Just before I do that, Madam Mayor, just in response to councillor Sheldon's question, so a draft productivity and cost savings plan has been prepared, but that will just need to be amended slightly given we are de-amalgamating in 2028. It was over the long term of SVC, so that can be amended and sort of brought back to council if that's what you would like. In terms of the de-amalgamation, council has appointed a chief transition officer who's starting on the 8th of April. That's probably the latest update at this stage.
And the Deputy Mayor and I have been meeting with the local members, Justin Clancy and Dr. Joe McGurr, to keep them up to date. They're very much involved with the whole process. Thank you. Anything else from the resolution report?
Just my favourite pet hate to get the Adelong Showground Committee off there. How are we going with that now?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we're still waiting back for the Showground Committee to come back to council with their concurrence or any changes that they want. We haven't heard back for a while now. So.
I don't think that's the case. I think the email was sent saying that they didn't agree with most of what was in the thing and they wanted to meet.
But they did do an excellent show on Saturday.
Just with the completed motion, this of 8.5 and also 11.3. Just at the start of that list, the potable water to the airport precinct. Is that completed in terms of now that they're doing raw water to the airport?
I can answer that.
Mm.
It was looking at an option rather than putting a fresh pump, a new water line in to use the existing pumps, put a new water line in and sell water at the same time as deliver water.
Mm.
So while this sat there, council then built a pipeline, a pump, and it's just let it sit there, which is really annoying. I might, just.
If we could have the
Ignore it.
Director of Infrastructure speak to it.
It's irrelevant. It's gone. It's finished.
So should we take it off there?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was
So
just
that's
saying
why
it's-
it's being marked
Marked
complete
complete.
and then it'll drop off the next one.
It'll drop off after the
Do you want to
due
speak?
date. It's already passed. Okay, I was just,
Goes a month after.
yeah, okay. And with the Menace Lake, it does say investigate a feasibility of returning the dam to the wetlands. I think we were in mind,
No, that's
having-
complete as well.
sorry, no, but there was a conversation we had with I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was suggesting that
Williams.
we not return it to wetlands, but create a wetlands above the dam. So is that,
I can comment on that. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Ward. So council did prepare a report to investigate returning it to wetlands, but that lapsed, if you recall. So then what happens, it reverts back to the previous resolution, which had about 8 parts of it, and that included, establish a working group. But because it's 12 months old, the previous resolution, it won't sit in this report, but that is something that council's still actioning and pursuing.
okay, thank you.
And the community is happy with that. Do you want to close, Councillor Sheldon?
No, I'm happy. There's nothing to add.
All those in favour? Now, the 10.2, page 35, the refresh of joint organisations framework. And this is responding to Minister Honey's letter advising its preference where we are with the Canberra Joint Organisation. Moved by Councillor Sheldon, seconded by Councillor Packard. I'd just like to say, as someone who goes, I find the Canberra Regional Joint Organisation excellent. But what I don't think we've been doing well is letting you guys know that. So from now on, the papers are going to come through the council so that you do find out what's happening.
I think it's an ideal vehicle also to push what Councillor Hayes was saying about earlier on in the earlier motion about how much infrastructure money that's in the area or how much is going to be used in the area, and we're seeing very little of it. Getting groups like that to help us lobby that we get more share.
Councillor Thompson.
Councillor
Yeah,
Packard.
just seeking clarification. It said some of the joint organisations were in abeyance or they didn't tell us which ones were, so it's very hard to decide whether we should think about association with others if they are close to us, and are they ones that are in abeyance or?
I think it did mention them, didn't it?
Yeah, just to confirm, just on page
Riverina,
37,
Arana,
Councillor
and-
Packard, it does mention
Oh, did it?
Southwest, New England, yeah, so it lists the ones that are there that are sort of exist but don't actively sort of do anything.
Madam,
Said unless you're part of a joint organisation, you don't
Get
get any
funding.
funding, so they just formed a dummy organisation and. funding.
Yep.
so Madam Mayor, it's not that I disagree that with the Canberra JO, I find it interesting that Canberra JO doesn't even have local government, they're just their own government. So do they really understand I suppose, the technical issues of New South Wales local government? The other concern that I do have is that while the JOs themselves present one set of support, the rocks, Rock was one of the strongest rocks in the entire of New South Wales, was recognised and respected for it. And when you look at many of the services and the provisions that we have across the Snowy Valleys now, a lot of that came about because of REROC, whether it was in relation to the collection of chemicals, the battery collections, the e-waste, even down to the lighting. They got a package deal for all the lighting across the REROC. So I wonder if there is some merit in us also being involved. I note that there was a meeting recently over in Wagga that was coordinated by REROC that we weren't a part of on the day, which would have had a significant impact for our community. So we need to be careful we don't cut our nose off to spite our face going with Canberra JO, but losing a connection with all of the other regional councils in our area that we had a really good rapport with, and that we actually had good support from, especially with a lot of the services that they got. So that's my concern, putting all eggs in one basket.
Yeah, and I think you are right, and we're very lucky with the chair of the councillor Fernan, Mayor Fernan, because he's very generous in his including us wherever possible. Of course, there is a monetary concern about this, and at this stage, monetary wise, we are actually better off with Canberra JO than we are with the ROC. So, yeah. Councillor Sheldon.
Can I close? Because I just wanted to carry on from what Councillor Thompson was saying. What I did find when I went to Regions Rising and I met the people from the Canberra JO, the executive office, she was actually saying that Wagga wants to get involved with the Canberra JO. That's how much they support
Wagga
it.
is involved.
Wagga's an affiliate.
Yeah.
Affiliate.
They're not involved with the Riverina JO.
No, Canberra. They want to become
REROC's
an
different.
affiliate of the Canberra JO
They are. Have been since.
and support, but very supportive of it also.
Okay, all those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Going on to page 39, there's two updated pecuniary interest forms there. We have a mover, councillor Larder, seconded by councillor Hardwick. Councillor Larder, do you need to speak? Anyone need to speak on that? Thank you for doing it, everyone. Okay, all those in favour? Great. Now to 10.4. Draft 2026-27 integrated planning and reporting documents for review. Councillor Sheldon, seconded councillor Thompson. Councillor Sheldon.
Okay, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've lost a lot of sleep over after reading the budget. No matter which way we look at it, you know, we're facing some uphill battles. If we look at the general fund, we're actually losing $220,000 a week before we open the door. And if we look at the consolidated one, it reduces down to 140. That's how much we're losing per week before we open the door. Unfortunately, the budget doesn't have the cash, how the cash is going to flow through the year, which I think is going to be pretty important. But it goes back to what I learnt in the induction, and I've raved on about, and I've been a pain in the backside about it, that we should never accept a budget deficit as councillors. Now, look, we've ticked a lot of boxes for the much awaited projects. And I think, you know, everyone's been, for years have been going on about these projects. We are ticking those boxes and we are getting it done. Unfortunately, someone's got to pay for it. We don't have the ratepayer base for it. So some hard decisions have to come in. And unfortunately, we as councillors have a lot to do with that responsibility by putting out budgets that we can tolerate. We can't keep duck shoving or using the government as a whipping boy. So really, I would like to make two recommendations. That the mayor convene a gathering with councillors to seek their view on how councils can improve its financial position for the 26-27 financial year. And at the same time, request the general manager prepares a financial path forward to present a balanced budget for a straight course forward in preparation for the September 2028 de-amalgamation. We need to make the hard decisions here, but really we need the reports are there for us to set our financial woes or reduce our financial woes. And we as councillors have really got to take the hard decisions, because the last thing I want to do is get to September 2028 and put the two new councils behind the 8 ball. So that's where I mean we have to have some responsibility here in setting the course towards a correction path.
Can I seek clarification? You've added 2 new recommendations.
Yes.
So so the first one is the mayor convene a gathering of councillors to seek their views on how council can improve its financial position. What was the second one?
The second one
At
that
the
we
same
had
time. It's
request,
up there on the board.
we request the general manager prepares a financial
Yes,
path
we've got a
forward.
second.
Right.
Towards a balance.
Balanced budget, yes.
Towards the
So-
balance.
As we head towards the September 28
Yeah.
de-amalgamation. Otherwise, we're going to leave a shocker for the two new councils.
As seconder, I'm happy to accept both of those as additional recommendations or motions.
Thank you, councillor Thompson. Okay, councillor Larder.
Can I just say that, I certainly won't be losing any sleep over it, because at the end of the day, how many millions of that is depreciation?
Too many.
And it's absolutely ridiculous that we are having to show depreciation on items that we've never put our hand in our pocket for in 20 years as a liability. It's obscene. And until the stupid idiots in these government organisations, including the minister responsible for all this
Councillor Larder,
moronic behaviour.
just watch language.
I mean, it's absolutely crazy that we've got to sit here and show a deficit when in fact it's garbage, complete nonsense. I mean, they provide grant funding for the majority of these things that we're depreciating on this asset list, and it is not a real representation of our balance sheet. It's disingenuous what's going on here, and the public should fully understand that there are items on this list that we are showing as a cost that we've never stuck our hand in our pocket for, ever, because we've got recurrent funding from the government or from somebody else to actually maintain those assets. So until the government realistically wants to have an adult conversation about what we depreciate, then, everyone in the community can think that we're irresponsible with the finances, but at the end of the day, that's not the case.
Councillor Packard.
When looking at these, which are headline figures, the thing that jumps out to me is that 2025-26 year capital grant funding 32.5 million, the next year 4.5 million.
Yeah.
Wages in the year that we had 32.5 million capital grants, 21 million. Wages in the year that we've only got 4.5 million grant funding, 24.5 million. So again, looking at the most simplistic way of running a business, it would seem like our activity and our income is dropping, but we're not able to balance that by dropping staff costs, which are the largest cost other than material. And I don't know whether there's, avenues to address that, or clarify why that would be the case.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Packard, in terms of the capital works program versus the staff wages. So because we're doing less capital works, that means we can't capitalise those wages anymore. So they come back to operational. So that's seen nearly a $2 million increase in wages coming back to operations for maintenance, because we're doing less capital work. So in terms of employee wages, there hasn't been a lot of change except for that one. We've had the usual 3%, which is in the local government award. We've had the CTO position, but other than that, they've been the only changes to staff wages. We haven't put on anyone new. We haven't
My point is that it would seem to me, looking at it again at a most fundamental level, that we've got this much less to spend to do stuff. We should have this much less. We should actually have a lower staff cost to match the income that we're getting in for capital? Or do we just sit with a staff body waiting?
So
Got no way to.
correct, so the issue is the capital works changes from year to year. So in an ideal world, we would say, okay, there's less capital work, so we'll reduce the staff, but we've got the Brindabella Road coming up. So we're not in a position to do that, but as I said, in an ideal world, that would be the case.
So just to clarify,
Councillor Worth.
thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify, with the staff, the 13% increase in staff wages, you're saying 10% is just from not being able to capitalise on those wages?
About
And
1.9 million
1.9 million increase.
has
and
come, to the income statement.
The 3.15 million, 80% reduction in operating grants. Is that a trend that's seen across the board with all local government, or is it specific to Snowy Valleys?
No, correct. So the operating grants are drying up across the board, as well as the capital grants as well. And ours have been very much, like disaster
Yeah,
sort of related as
recovery
well.
grants.
Yeah, recovery. So all those are ending pretty much this financial year.
And is there any, and you said growing up, is there any political will to continue operating grants so that local government can be sustainable?
The opposite.
So it just
That's the opposite.
just depends on
They
the
want us to
government at the
go-
time, what they want to do.
Country mayors,
That's
that's
very
their biggest thing is
Yeah,
to do
well,
that.
we-
Regional equity loading, maybe?
Yeah,
Yeah, well, perhaps, if we look at the accounting standards as Councillor Vita was referencing to in regards to these depreciation costs, it's all well and good to receive these capital grants, but if we haven't got the financial ability to pay them as a depreciation cost, because, and half the time we're not expected to replace that asset at the end of its life, we shouldn't be having
One
to
would
pay
think
these
so.
depreciation costs so that we can remain solvent and that we're not running a structural deficit. So we need to go to the ministers who are the appropriate ministers who are looking after these local government, Minister Ron Honig. And I mean, he's probably got all of the councils saying the exact same thing.
and you're absolutely right. And this is where it is good to be part of a ROC or a joint organisation, to be part of the local government New South Wales group, to be part of country mayors. And believe me, they're all singing to that exact same song sheet. And it's number one priority. Councillor Hayes.
Through the week, I was contacted by a member of the public who is very well versed in these sort of things, and graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors and used to handling large budgets. He was very surprised when I told him that the appreciation and impairment is a line item and it's not a reserve. He expected the money would go into there to reserve, and there's certain, 3.2% would be to the airport, and so much would be to roads, and so much would be to there. But it's just with everything else, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we just use it. So we don't quarantine part of it for anything. We don't say, okay, well, every year for the next 10 years, we'll quarantine 10% of our and put it away or whatever. We just, it just becomes part of the normal operating fund.
So,
Through
the
you,
General
Madam Mayor,
Manager.
to Councillor Hayes. So just a comment on that one. So as councillors are all aware, when we went through our financial sustainability plans, what was pointed out to us is that your property taxes, your rates and your annual charges should fund the asset operations, so your maintenance and your depreciation. And that's not the case for Snowy Valleys. It hasn't been for some time. So basically what I'm saying, the rates and annual charges we get, there's a shortfall between that
Yep.
and the
And the
depreciation and how much it costs to maintain. So that shortfall has been there for years. So if it was the opposite way, I completely agree that we could put that money aside for the assets. But as Councillor Sheldon has alluded to, our rate base is quite low. The actual income council gets from rates is only around $14 million a year. That's just rates. That's not the annual charges. So that was the issue that came out through that analysis was, that's been occurring for some time.
I always
So
like
can-
to compare the rates to the workforce costs as well. But you've got all these costs and only one lot of rate base.
Yeah.
So that's the issue. And this is the thing that people need to understand is we rely so much on these government grants, or we have to find alternative income.
And I've also been approached by people in Tumbarumba who said, can we please do SRVs now? So that when we start the new councils, that that money base is there. But I'll let the general manager speak to that. If you've made inquiries with IPART.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. So that's something that council's still looking into as part of the de-amalgamation sort of project plan. So whether SBC can apply for the 2 new councils for their SRV. So when proclamation occurs, it's then up to those 2 new councils if they would like to
Adopt or
implement
not.
or not. So yes, so they're ready to go. So that's something we're still,
But in the meantime, we can't do just one SRV,
I-
SVC.
I don't believe so, no, but
We can get approval for the new councils, is what you're saying.
Yeah, maybe. We'll look into it.
maybe that's what we're.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, it's really interesting because this is a report on integrated planning and reporting, which local government has been asked to look at since 2009, well, not look at it, but implement it. And the whole purpose of integrated planning and reporting is to ensure that whatever we do within our local government area, we understand the cost up front, the ongoing maintenance, and how we're going to fund it into the future. So it's all very nice to say that depreciation does not matter, but it does, because if you can't replace the essential infrastructure that we have across our local government area, we can't just ask for a grant to replace it. And when you go through and you look, and the amount of money that we spend on things like our sporting fields, our open spaces, our pools, even our aerodrome, and our new evacuation centre that we have coming on board, these are really significant pieces of infrastructure that if something happens to them, and not everything is covered by insurance. So we all had a little 4.5 earthquake the other day, which some may have felt or not. Some of those things impact on our infrastructure that may not be covered by insurance. So depreciation is not just a line item. It's something that we need to be looking at and we need to be able to prioritise. We should be making sure that every time we pass something within our business paper, that we fully understand the financial implications. We shouldn't just say, we'll fund it from the reserve, or we'll fund it from the events program, or we'll fund it from our donations. We need to understand how much it's going to cost, where it's going to come from, and if the money is coming out of something that means that we're going to take it away from something that it had already been tagged for, we as councillors need to be aware of that so that we make prudent decisions and not just think that somewhere out the back is an endless reserve of funds that we can keep dipping into. And that's what IPNR was initially designed for in 2009. And I think we are struggling a bit to get our head around that, because we should not pass anything without fully understanding the financial implications, where it's coming from, and what are we taking it away from in order to fund something else.
Which comes quite to point number 3 there.
Yep.
Councillor Sheldon, are you happy to close?
Yes, yeah, look, I take on board what everyone said. What Councillor Larder says about depreciation is valid, but it does have an end of life. And, you know, the days that we'll just go and get a grant aren't there anymore to cover that. We'll just go and get another grant. I take on board what Councillor Hayes says, because he says very valid points. Why aren't we quarantining some funds, even if it is the interest only out of the restricted funds, that we're putting that money aside, that it is quarantined for the depreciation, things like that. Start thinking about the future, because we can blame the government as much as we like, but at the end of the day, it's our ratepayers we've got to look after, and we've got to make some hard decisions ourselves about where we're going. And that's why I've recommended those 2 things, taking on board what everyone has said I appreciate it, but we have to make some hard decisions here and be honest with our ratepayers that we really do have. They're very lucky with some of the infrastructure that we've got out there and some of the projects we've done. But at the end of the day, someone has to pay for it. So we have to make some hard decisions if we're not getting it through our ratepayer base.
Just before we put that forward, can we clarify the meaning of point 4? Maybe if the general manager could speak to it so that we're on the same page.
So just for clarification, as identified in the financial sustainability plan we did for SVC, it was going to take 2 terms to make SVC viable, but we don't have that. So what's your expectation around number 4, councillor Sheldon? Is it for SVC over the next 2.5 years, or is it for the 2 new councils?
Really, for both, if we're on a pretty good financial leg pegging and we're not delving in, we're not going to leave the next 2 councils with huge deficits, start with huge deficits. Because at some point, this transition officer is going to have to split it down, the assets and all the rest of it, and say we owe so much, these people owe so much money over there, these people owe so much money out there, and bring in the rate pegging and all the rest. We really have to try and get a clear path forward, not only ourselves, but also for the 2 new councils.
Are you,
And
can I ask, are you
Yeah.
saying that you want both councils to have a potentially a balanced budget scenario?
all we can do is have a recommendation there, but we get ourselves on par. We have to make some adjustments in here, some hard ones.
The general manager.
So just to clarify, we did also do a financial sustainability plan for the 2 new councils. So that was
Yes.
a mix of looking at the income through SRVs and also looking at the expenditure. So we've done that already, and that's what we're going to, that will be part of the de-amalgamation process.
Is
What
that,
about,
is that what you're submitting to IPART? IPART for the 2 new councils? Is those scenarios for the 2? Like in terms of an SRV, for the 2 new councils, you'll
No.
have to submit a
They
feasibility.
would need to be updated, and we would submit something similar once it's gone through the transition committee.
I'm
Can I add a
I'm
fifth
just a
one?
bit concerned about that 4th one. Yes,
John?
councillor Lader.
I think we should put a 5th motion there that we purchase a lottery ticket each week.
I'm wondering whether we might move those 4 separately. Do I have any support in that?
So based on,
What's your,
does
What do you
what's
say?
your,
Would you like all those recommendations moved as one, or,
I can vote against it.
congratulations, thank you.
It would- if-
which I expected.
So just to confirm, councillors, this is just to note the draft budget. So the actual budget that's going out on exhibition will be presented to the April meeting. So this is just to note and to discuss, and then we'll bring like another budget with a full set of fees and charges and a long-term financial plan to the April meeting.
Councillor Thompson's got a good idea.
Do we have any idea of what our cash
Council-
deficit's going to be?
Councillor Thompson?
can we remove 4? And it's something that can be discussed at the gathering where we're actually looking at. So that's something that we can determine what we want the general manager to be looking for into the future for finances. So
We can, but I don't necessarily agree with it.
Well, then we can vote separately.
So a gathering's not a workshop, is it?
No,
No.
And it's called by the mayor.
And
And
it's
to
all-
seek views,
Gathering, I thought.
To seek
gathering.
not
views.
making decisions.
There will be no guitars. Or there could be.
Goodbye.
Come by that.
So, councillor Inglis,
I just want to add, I've been listening carefully to the debate, that I think there's a lot of merit in what's proposed by councillor Sheldon, because the minister's made it quite clear that unless it can be demonstrated that both the new councillors will be financially sustainable, he will not proclaim them. I think it's a step in the right direction. Making an effort to establish it, start now.
Yeah.
In formulating a plan that results in both.
Which is what the
councils
business
being
case was that we
viable.
presented to him.
Otherwise they won't be declined.
Yeah, thank you.
Just,
Yes, councillor Wirtz, and
I
then I
just
think we're
want
going to close.
to understand, sorry, another question, how this tie in with the committee, the amalgamation committee, because you're talking about a gathering, talking about the financial sustainability of the two new councils, or is it just this current council?
This current council, the gathering's about this current council.
Right.
And point 4 starts getting a bit into the de-amalgamation, which is why,
Yeah, that's
I'm
what
not in
that was sort of
favour.
my question in regards how would that would relate to the
yes. Councillor Sheldon?
separate
Yeah, look,
committee?
the reason number 4 there is we've appointed a general manager. We've got directors. We've got a CFO. They're all highly qualified people. They will have a more clinical look at how to put a business or some figures up there that we can actually understand. And they'll be more clinical when they look at the costings, and I hate to say it, but as CFO, and excuse me, they are very clinical and very surgical. We can afford to do this and we can't afford to do that. The general manager looks at it and says, okay, probably argue with the CFO. And the directors of each department will go through each of the services and say, when we're moving forward, we can afford this, this is making a profit, or it's costing council too much money. Really, we can't go forward with these services because they are taking too much out of our ratepayer base. And we're going to keep increasing our deficits unless we make some hard decision and get rid of some non-core services that aren't delivering. The directors are the best ones to do it. Unfortunately, we as councillors take everything a little bit too personally. And I'm quite willing to have the target on my back from the, after the directors and the general manager has presented that report.
Councillor
For the better, not for the worse.
Think
Comment,
about it, it comes down to timing. I mean, how long do we have? I mean, we're talking, we can't get an SRV for SVC in the next 2 years. If we're talking, 7, 9, 11, depending on which bottom figure you take, and as the loss, how do we manage between now and the declaration of councils? And at the most optimistic, if at the time the two councils are declared, we've got SRVs in place to come on then, what are we leaving the two new councils as a legacy if they've carried a significant 2-year loss-making period through? So I think what you're saying is, can the staff put forward a scenario where there is a balanced budget between now and there's some very hard decisions made leading up to de-amalgamation? I think that's what the intent of number 4 is.
Yes. Just a comment. The only issue I have is there's only about 2 weeks between now and when the deadline closes for the next business paper. So the budget will be presented to the April meeting. As everyone knows, we've already gone through over the past 3 years and saved about $3.5 million. That was staff and reduction in services. So it's just that number 4 is going to be quite challenging, just given what we've already done, what the future holds with the amalgamation and the time frame between now and April is just my only comment.
My only response to that is don't put off to tomorrow what you can do today. That's all I can say. It's a bit hard.
I really think we've discussed this enough.
I'm just
Thank you.
thinking about, there's nothing there that says this has to be done for this financial year. So it can be done following the budget in June. So it's for the next budget period.
If council was to start the process in SRV for the 2 new councils, we'd have to do that next year anyway. We would have to start that process.
So that would already be part of that process.
Part of that process, if that makes sense.
Okay. Councillors, how would you like to vote on this? Do you want to vote for the first 3 and then 4? Do you want to take 4 out, Councillor Sheldon? No. You're happy to leave that there?
Do them individually.
I think it's important.
Beg your pardon?
Can we do them individually?
Individually? Yep. Okay. Moved by Councillor Hardwick, seconded by Councillor Larder.
like a clear.
Add an serium,
Serious.
add seriatim. Okay, councillors, I'll ask you to look at
You need
number
to
one.
vote on it.
Oh, all those in favour?
Just something.
Unanimous, right. Thank you, councillor Thompson. Okay, number one. Note the draft 2026-27 combined delivery program and operational plan. All those in favour? Everyone bar councillor Sheldon. Okay, two, note the draft operational budget. All those in favour? Everyone bar councillor Sheldon. Number three, convene a gathering called by the mayor with councillors to discuss the financial path forward. All those in favour? Okay, so we have Thompson, Packard, Hayes, Hardwick, Wirtz, Sheldon, Ham, against Inglis, Larter. Okay, and now point 4 is at the same time request the general manager to prepare a financial path forward, to present a balanced budget for a straight course forward in preparation for 2 new councils following the September 28 de-amalgamation. 4,
Is that possible?
Thompson's 4, Inglis is 4, Packard's 4, and Sheldon's 4,
Words.
and Wirtz is 4. Against is Hayes, Larter, Hardwick, Ham. Thank you. Okay, on to 10.5, statement of investments.
Move that.
Thank you, councillor Packard, seconded councillor Hardwick. Councillor Packard.
Just, with interest rates going up, will that make a material difference to the returns from that portfolio?
Through us to the CFO.
Thank you. For you, Madam Mayor, yes, it will make a difference, and we are now getting better interest rates. We've started to get better interest rates, and we're also trying to hold the term deposit for a longer term as well. We haven't really financially defined that number, but it will be high.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillors, all those in favour?
What are we voting
Statement of investments.
on?
5.
Yep, unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Which brings us to 11, which into the management reports. The first one, 11.1, transfer of Cancoban preschool reserve funds.
I'll move that.
Councillor Hayes, seconded councillor Sheldon. Councillor Hayes.
Sorry.
Move it.
I beg your pardon?
Yep.
Happy to move it.
Can I just
Any other? Yes.
just ask a question? I note that it runs at a loss of $133,000 a year. So I'm trying to understand how, as a wider community, we let the rest of the community understand that that $133,000 is money well spent, because it's not only coming out of Tumbarumbas, it's coming out of our whole SVC. And so while I have no issue with transferring the funds over for them, I also note that there's I think they pay $12,000 a year in total, but we pay all of the electricity and everything for the buildings.
Through you, Madam Mayor, councillor Thompson, so this is a council owned and run facility, so we pay for everything, the staffing, the utilities. It's our building now. It was transferred to us 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was now.
And it's sat vacant for
Yeah,
Is that vacant because we couldn't find a teacher, but we found a teacher now, so, yeah.
Thank you.
and those funds have been fundraised within the community.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favour?
11.1.
Can Coburn, unanimous, thank you. Now the report, multi-purpose and evacuation centre project update, March 26th. Do I have someone, it's councillor Hayes, seconded by councillor Thompson, councillor Hayes.
Just to
You
commend-
flicked.
to commend the,
Mm,
everyone involved. I think it's going along swimmingly.
Looking great. Yep. Any
Yeah.
other comment? Yeah, councillor
I'd
Worth.
also like to say the same thing, like we went on the tour there. It was an excellent tour and to see the progress of it going up from the start to where it is now. So it's fantastic and looking forward to seeing it completed.
Absolutely. Councillor Sheldon?
I think the big thing is it's below budget
So far.
so far. I think it's good.
Okay.
Who knows?
Shouldn't have said it.
Mm, Costs are going up.
You reckon?
yeah, exactly. Okay, all those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. 11.3 multi-purpose and evacuation centre project operation and management agreement. Councillor Sheldon, councillor Thompson, councillor Sheldon.
Yes, look, I think it's the expression of interest. It's fantastic, but I think there's a lot of clarifying points in there that concern me. I'll let someone else, and then I seek clarification. Talk to it.
If you do, you'll close the vote.
I think this is probably the most sensible thing to do. You know, our core business is not running basketball stadiums or, but when the evacuation centre is needed, that'll be our core business and that's when we'll step in. So I think for the majority of the time that this thing will be there, it needs to be used by the community. The community are very excited. A lot of the community are very excited by this building and looking very much forward to it. I know the kids at school are. So I think if we can get this nailed down and it's at very little cost to council, that's the way, because one thing we do know, when council run things, they cost more money.
Yep. Councillor Inglis.
Yes, I'm just concerned, Madam Mayor, as to how those interested might be able to, on the information currently available, prepare an expression of interest. I mean, it seems to me that there's no material in the documents that we've seen that indicates or provides information as to how they can make money out of it. Like, there's no information as to what sports are in fact going to use it, how often they will use it, what they're prepared to pay for it, what other community interest groups are interested, how often they will use it, how much they're prepared to pay for it. If there are to be conferences, is the infrastructure already included in the current budget, such as chairs, tables? Will the kitchen be able to, it will be of sufficient size and have sufficient content to be able to cater for conferences? In other words, where's the information from which an interested party could formulate an expression of interest? So, well, this is how much it's going to cost to run the place. This is, as a result, I think I could make this amount of money out of it. Is there any basic information that's going to be provided?
To the Director of Infrastructure.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Inglis, there's two documents attached. One is the standard EOI document that people fill out, which has all our terms and conditions. And I think the information you're looking for is in the actual draft operation and management agreement document. And if you go to table 7 of that document.
Is that in the annexure?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see table 7 identifies the potential user groups. So they're all nominated there.
But have they been approached and asked and expressed the interest? And
what we can't do, so what the expression of interest, why we've put them there, is that the people who are looking into this expression of interest, they need to contact these people and they need to get from them what they think their use is of the facility. and then they will put that in their submission back to us.
So the onus is on them.
The onus is on the submitters,
All right.
yeah. We've put in also there what we think the facility will cost to run. So we've put in the agreement what we think the expenses are that we know of. We can't put in things like operating expenses for staff and things like that, because that again is the onus is on the submitter. But we've put in the document what we believe the outgoings are, and that's all explained in the operation and management agreement as well, and our estimate of cost of what those outgoings are, so that they get an idea of what the, if you go to page 9 of that agreement, it's all listed there in table 3, what we think the outgoings are. So it's up to them to understand that, we're not saying they're fixed costs at this stage, they're our estimate of those costs, but it gives them a pretty good idea of who's paying for what and what those costs are.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's up to them anyway to substantiate that
That's right.
those figures are realistic.
Yes,
And achieve
and we'd expect questions to come back and say that is unrealistic or that is realistic. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, councillor Inglis. Councillor Larder.
Just in regard to that, I don't know whether it's possible to tie this in. Maybe this is something for a local government conference question. But in terms of the insurance in relation to these buildings and you know, you obviously have indoor cricket in there, indoor football, whatever, basketball. Seems to me that we end up doubling up on insurance
Yeah.
a lot of the time. So the kids will pay this through their association and then we'll have some. And it's a
Just
lot
the
of
father of 6 children.
double dipping.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be some investigation in relation to that, you know, perhaps
Is it public liability for the building or for each individual sport type thing?
I think the Director of Infrastructure would like to speak to that.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Look, it's fairly clear in the document that council will cover the building insurance costs. Okay, and then council will also cover the contents costs of the contents that belong to council. The player insurance, which I think what you're referring to, the clubs charge their players or members, that is up to the clubs. No one else benefits from that cost, and it's not tied into this particular development. The public liability that council will hold on the facility itself, outside of player liability, is $20 million. And that's for our liability if a staff member or someone has an accident, etc. But the actual player costs, if someone injures themselves on the basketball court in playing a game, they're covered by their club's insurance.
And it is, John, on page 166, that it's up to the operator's responsibility. And then the other internal.
I'm not saying it's not, but what I'm saying is maybe it's an opportunity for some reform so that perhaps the council would take out insurance.
As you say,
as
a good
whole,
a
rather
good
than
motion
everyone
for
being
Office
ripped
of
off.
Local Government Conference or whatever. Councillor Sheldon, you're going to shut debate?
No, I want some clarifications.
Yep. Did you move it?
It's
No, I seconded it.
page 19. To me, it's a bit of a red flag. The information provided pursuant to this EOI represents council's present intentions. Council can change without notice at any time, any or all of the information provided or pursuant to this EOI. Now, if I was reading an EOI, I wanted to put an EOI, I would say that's a bit of a red flag to me.
It should be quiet.
Through you, Madam Mayor, they can clarify that with us if they like, David, but we're protecting our interests.
No, all right.
Yep.
And the weighting, the financial criteria, the weighting on that is 50%. My question is that enough, that weighting on that financial? Because that's what it's all going to come down to at the end of the day. So there's nil risk to council financially.
To the General Manager.
You want me to answer that? Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the weighting is deliberately set at 50% because what we don't want to do is, I guess, scare off potential submitters that council is looking heavily upon this facility as a commercial opportunity, because I think we all have to be realistic. that it isn't a commercial opportunity. And if we weight financial weightings higher than 50%, what we're telling the market is that council values a commercial return on this building, whereas we think it's more reasonable to say the weighting for financial and non-financial return should be equally weighted. So we've done that deliberately so that we encourage people to submit, and also they understand that we're putting an equal weighting on the financial and non-financial benefits of this facility.
All right. few
Councillor
more.
Thompson.
No, I think he's
Oh,
got-
sorry.
I've got a few more. Grant writing, really, is it any of our business that they need to show a demonstrated success in their ability to write grant funding applications?
Through you, Madam Mayor.
That's a question.
But really,
Councillor Sheldon, a question to the
Yes.
Director of.
is it really any of our business?
It'd be helpful if we had an operator that did have the ability, but it's not critical in the overall assessment of the EOI. But what we're saying is, and what we're reading between the lines in this, is that we're encouraging operators to be able to get grants. Because remember, we're trying not to manage it.
No, I understand that. The other thing is you put a bond in of only $5,000. Is that enough? I would have thought it would really be, normal things like this should be looking for monthly rentals, or does council, monthly leasing fees, or does council have an idea in the back of their mind what they want to lease it for?
Through you, Madam Mayor, again, we may get submissions where people do offer us money to run the facility. We may get submissions where people say, this is what will cost you for us to run the facility. So we need to be cognizant of that, that there will be a number of operators out there who will look at this as an opportunity to run a facility, but we pay them, and that's not uncommon. Or we may be lucky and we'll get operators who say, we will pay you this much money to run the facility, a rental or a lease. And I hope we do get those, so that we can minimise our costs. But the bond, it's draft at the moment because we don't have any real idea of what the rental return we could get on this facility is at the moment.
The next one is, it says, land owned by council. Isn't it Crown land, or do we refer to it in a lease as, or an expression of interest, as our own land?
Transferred over.
It's our land. Councillor.
Transferred.
Thank you.
It's part of it. That's all.
While you're looking at that, I'm going to ask Councillor Works for his,
I was just
question
going to talk
or-
about the depreciation over 40 years. Who decides the life of the asset? Is that the general number, or like?
Percentage of.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's a standard formula used for all building assets. 40 years.
All of them?
Yeah, yeah,
And will that
irrespective
be-
of whether you've built a concrete bunker for a
As
nuclear
opposed
war.
to a weatherboard.
Yeah, or a tennis court, it's a standard formula.
Or
used.
a hangar,
Is there any ability to vary that?
I guess you could, but that's the standard formula we use in our finance system for all buildings. So if you want to do that, we'd be looking at then things individually as opposed to a group.
Could we call it? a
and
cost
I think that is something we need to look at when we have our gathering.
Before we leave.
Councillor Inglis.
Can I just ask one more question? I've had a look at, thank you for directing me to table 7. I see that the Tumut basketball, Tumut netball, Tumut soccer and Tumut tennis have pickleball have shown some interest. Have any of them indicated that they're prepared to pay for it? And if so, how much?
Through you, Madam Mayor, they haven't indicated to us what they would pay to use the facility. That would be set as part of the fees and charges, but they have indicated that they would use the facility. Remember, the operator.
Very different.
Yeah, that's right. But remember, it's the operator who, along with, and if you read in the agreement, this is actually quite an important part of the agreement, that the operator has the ability, or we're encouraging the operator to have the ability to set the fees and charges, but within reason, so that it's affordable. So that whoever we get to operate this facility does not make it unaffordable and discourage people from netball, futsal, badminton, whoever else to use the facility. So the fees and charges they set, we'd expect to see that information in the submissions.
It's in there.
And who will decide, staff or council?
That's with the facility.
We would bring the operator's submission back to council, the preferred one, which would, I hope, have the indicated fees and charges they would be charging, and you'd have an opportunity to have a say.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Sheldon, you found your questions?
Well, no, this is just an observation that we do know in the prelim talks that the basketballs people operate for 34 hours a week. The operating hours for the stadium is 13 hours per week. So there's a fair bit of open space in there that's going to be really important that it fills up and we get someone that can attract, as Councillor Inglis says, those people that are interested, because that will be the make or break. And that's if the Basketball Association take it up for their full 34 hours a week.
Thank you. Any, Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just note that on page 177, in the hours of operation and bookings, that for weekdays at 7 a.m. till 10 p.m, Saturday it's 8 a.m. till 10 p.m, Sunday is 8 till 6, and public holidays is from 8 till 10. If we receive complaints from the neighbours that the soundproofing is not as was hoped to be, or we start having major issues, is that something that can be reviewed?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Thompson, look, they are straight out of the DA approval conditions.
Yep.
Okay, hours of operation is straight out of that. And of course, if that scenario arises, council can review the operating hours. They're just what I call the baseline
Thank you.
operating hours out of the development.
And then on page 178, facility fit out improvements that are approved by council and undertaken by the operator at their cost will remain the property of the user groups. Now, the user groups, is that the operator or is that the clubs that access the
pickleball?
Because my understanding is that anything that you do that is a fixed improvement to the facility remains part of the facility irrespective.
Through Madam Mayor, not necessarily, and sometimes we don't want it going forward. So the reason that clause is in there is that if a particular user group comes in and uses it for a short period of time, say 2 years, because futsal's popular, and they've installed a whole lot of futsal bits and pieces in the building to use for that period of time, we don't want to be lumped with the responsibility of when futsal's become unpopular and they don't want to use the facility anymore, of taking that out. So that's why we've said that onus is on you. If you want to bring in to facilitate your sport special equipment or fittings and fixtures, that's fine, but you have to remove them at the end of when you're not going to be using that facility anymore.
Thank you.
Want me to close?
I'd like you to close.
The only deal, right, in closing, I would just like to say the recommendation we alter endorse to note.
Sorry, what do you mean by that, David?
Well, you've said here that council endorse a draft operation and management agreement and draft expression of interest. I would like to change the endorse to note.
So.
But we have to.
We have to endorse
We
it
have
for
to
that.
endorse
All
it.
right,
Okay.
Yeah, you're not going to win that one, Councillor Sheldon. Okay, all those in favour? Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you for the work, Mr. Mitchell.
Yes. And
Hope
Mr
we get
Murray.
someone.
Oh, he's probably not coming. Okay, 11.4, writing for the Disabled Association Heads of Agreement.
Move that way.
Thank you, Councillor Packard, seconded by Councillor Sheldon. Councillor Packard.
I just think this one's a no-brainer. I don't know that we need to say that much more. They have very little way to generate any income themselves, but what they contribute to the community is,
Quite outstanding.
can't put a value on it.
I've got a query. I note that we went from $579 up to $652 in from what they were paying on an annual lease fee. And that's even allowing for the fact that we didn't have CPI the previous year. That's more than double CPI for 2 years. Based on, I'm just trying to understand, because I also thought that the legal cost of preparing the lease is being shared, or they have to pay for their own legal fees to get that lease done. Sorry.
The Crown Land's annual fee has gone up substantially in the last few years. It's gone from $100 and something to $600.
But that's being waived.
So it's gone up.
So
Yeah,
the
but
Director of
ours
Infrastructure and
ours
Works.
is in general. we just talk about CPI?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, so it has gone up more than CPI, it's gone up $73. One of the reasons that is because of the time it's taken for us to get the lease to be prepared by council's legal team. We believe the $1,200, a shared cost. Our experience is generally we organise and pay for that up front, and then we approach the leasee for their share in the payment. And that's when I think we'll hear about this again. So generally that $73 increase is for council's time in preparing the new lease, which is a 5-year lease. So it's a different scenario to when we were just doing license agreements, our standard license agreement. This is a brand new lease that we've never had before, and it gives them that tenure of 5 years, so they don't have to worry about it.
So they pay $652 a year plus CPI.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you, councillor Thompson. Councillor Packard, are you happy?
With that 5-year lease, does that have do they have an option to renew?
I think that's the maximum we can give on community land is 5 years, and this is classified as community land, and then we have to renew.
That's correct, actually.
Close debate.
Okay, councillor Hayes. Oh, all those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, 11.5 Country University Centre. Councillor Packard will leave the room. Could you shut the door behind you? Brutal. Okay, well, do I have a mover? Councillor Hardwick. Seconded by Councillor Thompson. Councillor Hardwick.
I think it makes sense. It makes sense here. Happy to support it, and I hope other councillors see the same.
So
Yep. Yeah, councillor Works.
clarify the recommendation says not support the request to refund the application fees
I
totaling
read that wrong.
$1,893.50.
Just,
Whereas, and councillor Hardwick, you were thinking more.
Yeah, I was saying the opposite, sorry. I was
There are
given so many refunds, I was assuming it was a refund. That's my fault.
Yeah,
There are two options,
Yeah.
3 options.
clarification, and I am on the board, but I'm not the chair, isn't it? But the toilets over there, they needed to, for access, they needed to move a wall 3 metres. That's it. It's an internal wall. I don't think it probably, I'm surprised it needed
a DA for it.
anyway, but it's just an internal movement of a wall. Why it would attract a lot of money in, and all it does is creates bad vibes between the well, not so much the board, but even the people over there using it, because everyone knows.
That it's a council facility.
I know it's a council, and yeah,
Just
it's a council facility, and all the benefits go to council because it's their facility.
Councillor Works, do you have a question there?
I'm just curious, as in, like you've explained the reason of the costs being moving of a council wall. Why is the recommendation not to support it, just for clarification?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Thompson. So that modification was put in and undertaken by council staff. So council staff spent time on that modification, like assessing the process. So staff can't waive sort of DA fees, so it has to come to council. But that's a council decision. If it's waived, it's then given as like a donation back to that organisation, because we can't give refunds or waive sort of DA fees. They're the statutory fees. Council staff have undertaken that task, so it's a matter for council if you want to give that money back in a donation, essentially.
Right, so you're waiving the fee essentially of the DA.
Yeah, so it turns into a
It's
donation.
been paid.
So-
It's
Because
already been
it's
paid.
already been paid.
Repaying it back,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's my.
And I'm
Thanks for the
I'm
clarity.
very aware of that. It is a council facility over there that was really run down, and this 500,000 being spent on it, I think is just making a much better facility for a council asset.
And
It won't just be the Country University Centre using the toilets.
Yes, exactly.
It'll be our tenants.
Our tenants as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Councillor Sheldon, you're,
How
What is
much
the-
money has council invested in that facility already?
Councillor, Director of Infrastructure and Works.
Through
Mr.
you,
Mitchell?
through you, Madam Mayor. I can only speak recently, councillor Sheldon, on what we spent upgrading the other tenancies in the bill, which was for Mission Australia, Forest,
No,
and we haven't, I can't give you the figures going back years.
I'm only interested really for this renovation.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so we've had to move those tenants out because of the CUC.
So we've
Done the
lost income.
refurb, lost some rental income, etc.
So we spent $25,000 refurbing the rental tenancies, and we haven't charged them additional money for that. We actually waived fees because of the CUC moving out. We waived rental because of the impact of having to move them into other locations. So that was a cost to council, plus the recarpeting and painting. And we've recarpeted on behalf of CUC the main corridor of the building as well. So council's also spent a fair bit of money in the last 6 months on that building and lost money on that building.
Could you talk to how the building was though, before this all happened?
Yes, Madam Mayor, it was in bad condition. There's no doubt about that. And the $500,000 investment in the capital works that they've undertaken has improved the building.
Was there a DA for the initial capital works?
Yes.
And
It's all
that
had to
was-
go.
That was paid
Yeah.
to council at the time.
Yep.
This
that's all
is an
been paid.
So
afterthought.
this is a secondary DA for the modification.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
a modification.
It was a
to the deed.
modification. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The same building, you have the radio station that has just spent almost $300,000 doing up building with no input from council. So the radio station itself has funded extensive work and have actually included an entire accessible toilet and shower facility, or no, just a toilet, there's no shower there. So it's, you know, when these tenants are going in, the concern that I have is that while we look at the amount of the $1,893 and we go, well, it's not much, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about integrated planning and reporting. If we say we will reimburse that money because it's already been paid to council, where do we take the money from? If we take it from a pool of funds, had those funds already been tagged for something else? So it's not just a matter of saying, oh, we'll spend nearly $2,000 and refund it because the building was in poor condition. We knew that. They knew it. There was a grant they got significant funding from other organisations, and whereas, you know, as I said, the radio station has just spent about $300,000 doing significant works to council's building.
However, the radio station is not going to be used, toilets do not get used by the tenants, the council tenants. These toilets,
Well,
Education,
Will it-
bridge
will
out
it-
poverty, we should be supporting it.
you
I
will
think-
if you go.
Yeah, I think this is a good
Anyway.
message to send positive.
oh, there's an alternative is refund 100% of the application fees totaling $1,893.50 associated with modification application and construction certificate relating to the DA. That's option 3.
Or we could go option 2 and split.
I'll just move option 1. I don't know if you haven't done it, but I will.
Option
It's already
1.
been-
Well, not option 1, number 3. You can
Oh,
refund a
option.
lot.
So we go back to who moved.
Me, I moved it.
Thank you, councillor Hardwick, and seconded by councillor Thompson. Are you happy to go with option, if we include option 3?
I would prefer to go to option 3, yes.
You moved
Yes,
option 4.
councillor Thompson?
Up to Those two, because you know, we've just had a huge debate
Yes, yes.
on
we understand.
IPNR and funding, and $2,000 is not a drop in the bucket.
Okay, so now we have three recommendations there. We can,
Is that going to replace 1 and 2? So we had a mover and a seconder for 1 and 2. So I think someone needs to probably move an amendment, which is number 3. Which is to
Okay.
refund 100% or 50%.
yeah, an amendment's a better word than option 3.
Gotta be
No,
more than
it
that.
just,
Just refund the law.
Just add option 3.
And I mistakenly moved this with missing the not.
Okay, so councillor Hardwick and councillor Thompson, are you happy if we just go
Happy for the
to,
vote to lapse.
Just go back.
for that one to lapse?
Yep.
Now we have a new motion on the table. Do I have a mover for the new motion? Councillor Wirtz, councillor Larter?
And can I ask the question then, where are the funds coming from?
Fees and charges.
We'll just wait.
Toilets.
Okay, so that lapsed. We'll just help Jeannie out.
I'd like to
first.
speak to the motion.
Okay,
I'd just like to say, I think it's a wonderful, country university, the fact that it's being, built here in Shroom, it's awesome, and, I think we should be
So they
supporting it
decided to let the first one.
by refunding the 100%.
I agree.
1 and 2,
My mistake.
that's now
It's
left,
$1,893.
which is refunded.
Okay.
30%.
and that was Hardwick and Larter.
They can use that for, educating
Oh,
young
Wirtz.
people in this town and the local area. I think that's a great thing.
Thank you, councillor Wirtz.
I got that.
Any,
A query as to where the funds are coming from.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to councillor Thompson, I'll need to confirm that it can come from council's donation sort of budget that we have annually sort of set aside. If it hasn't been exhausted, it could probably come from there, but I'll have to have a
Hey,
look.
from my development budget, if you like, I think I've got a few thousand left.
I'm using them up. Okay, councillor Wirtz, do you want to close debate?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we have that new motion on the table. All those in favour? So we've got Hayes, Larter, Inglis, Hardwick, Wirtz. And Ham. And against is Sheldon
If I missed
and Thompson.
it wrong.
Thank you, councillors. Okay.
Amendment became the motion, then we're supposed to, the motion was put and carried.
On page.
No, the first motion didn't have.
If we'd all
Sorry,
voted.
first
What did you call it, lapse? Grant, you said it lapsed.
Okay, 12.1 minutes of the local traffic forum, the 11th of February, and I do like to acknowledge that councillor Thompson takes this very seriously, and thank you for attending.
Thank you. I'll move it.
Move it, seconded by councillor Sheldon. Councillor Thompson?
Look, just to thank the staff for the input that they have. It's a really good, we have 2 excellent representatives for our local members in Chris Blake from the southern end and also Michael Primebergs from the northern end. Both take it very seriously, both make a significant contribution, and as we can see, at Anzac Day is all good. No
Yes.
issues this year.
All covered.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favour?
Seconded it.
Sheldon.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Now, 12.2 minutes of the Tumbarumba Flood Risk Management Committee on the 26th of February. Was that? Councillor Hayes, seconded by councillor Sheldon. Councillor Hayes? If I could just give my thanks to John Reeves, who chaired the meeting. I tried to get there and I missed it. So he did a very good job. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Unanimous. Okay. 12.3 minutes, Tumut Aerodrome Committee meeting on the 10th of February. Moved by councillor Larter, seconded by councillor Hardwick. Councillor Larter?
Just a quick note about the aerodrome opening on Saturday, that I'd encourage all the public to go out and have a look at the great work that's been undertaken out there in relation to getting the airport to where it is, and there'll also be some great displays on, hopefully if the weather is okay, from low-level aerobatic displays, and the Air Force are attending in their Wirraway as well. So in addition to True North helicopters doing some fire bombing, and that's all been approved. And I'd like to thank Mr. Mitchell and his executive assistant for her unbelievable commitment to getting this off the ground, especially Mr. Mitchell's assistant. Just amazing amazing work behind the scenes that is greatly appreciated by everyone involved. The only other thing that I'll clarify is, and I don't need a motion out of it, but I just want to make sure that I'm pretty sure the Aerodrome Committee would like to see the Fire Control Centre located to a section of the airport that's not going to be as intrusive.
Probably a little bit off topic.
It's in the minutes. So
We're
it's
just
not off
noting
topic.
the minutes. Okay, I think that has been noted.
So
And,
that's,
and the other thing about those minutes is I'm just very grateful, Councillor Larder, to the amount of positivity within those minutes, and just to note Fred Kell's letter to the council saying, you know, how much he's appreciated the work out there. And he just said that never in his lifetime would he have thought the airport could have been as good as what it is. So thank you very much for that. Okay,
Can I
Councillor
just seek some
Thompson.
clarification? And I'm not wanting to be the downer on such positive minutes and things like that. The concern I do have is at the last council meeting, we were informed that this was going to cost $10,000 and that it was going to be funded. We were going to ask yet again if it could come out of any residual grant funding, which I understand it hasn't, which
No.
means that council is now footing the bill for the opening. It comes back to what I was saying earlier about our integrated planning and reporting. You know, we're asking staff to save us money, and yet we're continually raising significant costs. And just looking, there's $2,000 allocated or identified for traffic control, $880 for CASA. And I know it's an excellent, and I know that the project itself is going to be worthwhile, and I really value the letter from Fred Kell acknowledging how good it is. But as a local government area, we really need to start looking at how do we generate income, because, you know, 5 cents, which was the original amount of money that we should have been getting from our fuel, that's it, apart from hangar fees. There's no landing fees, we need to be looking, if we now have a state-of-the-art aerodrome facility, we need to look at how do we generate some income. And it really does concern me that we're now putting on an opening event without a true understanding of what it's going to cost, or in fact where that funding is coming from, because the aerodrome operates at a deficit of what,
328,000.
Yeah,
a deficit of 300.
Yep.
That's including
That's the
depreciation.
yeah.
So
So-
even
so
to
it's
take
all
that.
gone.
So
Could I have the Director of Infrastructure to
Yeah.
speak to that? Or do you want to?
Did you want to?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Thompson. So there was an initial estimated budget of 10,000. That's when council was going for the grant funding. But since we weren't able to get that, we've revised the budget down. And essentially that will come from council sort of, like event sort of budget that's adopted annually. There is funds in that events budget at the moment.
So had we earmarked that events budget for anything else?
So I think there's about 80,000 that's allocated for council events throughout a financial year. So we've got our set events that we do, but we also allow, like a buffer for any other ad hoc sort of events.
But that's
that
in
come up.
total for the year. So what would be the balance in that account now as we get to March?
Do you have any idea?
That's okay.
Okay.
We just need to be mindful that,
Yeah, every penny counts.
well, and we're not,
Considering, for the events budget as well, the fact that we've cut most fund for local events across the board, so. And then we're funding an event, is what I'm saying. Yeah, that's from the events funding.
that was the total budget, but we've already spent a significant amount of that. That would include things like our Australia Day and seniors and everything.
No, I just
So-
mean local events like,
Could I ask the General Manager
Anyway.
to send around
Just
an
getting off-
updated?
just getting off
um,
topic. I was gonna ask a
Budget for that.
question though.
Yes, Councillor Works.
Because you did mention that it wasn't funded by the grant. How much of the grant was left over? Was there an exact figure on that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is money left over. I can't give you the exact figure because we're still in construction, but it's over $100,000.
Okay.
Can I tell you, I got in touch with Christy McBain, who sends her regards. She's got the bigger show on. She can't be here on Saturday. She thinks it's a wonderful project, but the guidelines are the guidelines. She couldn't do anything about it, but she wished she could. Okay, councillors has asked to put the motion. All those in favour?
Hey, note the report, isn't it?
Unanimous.
Only noting the minutes.
Thank you. Okay, and then 12.4, minutes of the Youth Council Committee for the 12th of February, moved by councillor Wirtz, seconded by councillor Hardwick. Councillor Wirtz.
Yeah, I just want to thank all the council for first and foremost organising, well, I'll probably go down there's a couple of things here. There is a mural that we're trying to get grant funding for, to do a mural around the local LGA. There's been a few sites. The Boys Club Hall was one of them. There's been sites in Batlow and different places around. I was suggesting the new evacuation centre, considering its blank concrete walls, might be an option in the future. On the inside.
Mr. McMurray's just had a heart attack.
No, there's panelling going on now.
On the inside?
Outside.
Oh, no, I meant the inside of the. Of
Yeah,
the-
like it's gonna be finished.
In the welcome area, maybe.
Come up and have a look at some of the ones we've done at the Chinook High School.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's a great, avenue to pursue, and perhaps we can get the youth involved in designing or ideas for the design. And yeah, the other thing was organising obviously the Starry Night Ball, which is coming up on the 18th of April, Saturday.
Great marketing.
Tickets are selling, although we would like to sell some more. So if you know anyone, youth age between 16 and 24, it's best to impress. Get a suit on, wear your nice dress, and there's going to be a cake. There's going to be king and queen crowned there, so it should be a great night. And there's going to be a DJ playing. And it's all at the Club Chimit, so you can people over the age of 18 can buy alcohol there and enjoy themselves responsibly. So
Do you need a hand with setting up?
we need a hand
Chaperones.
with chaperones. So
I really want, I'm happy to go, but I'm old.
yeah,
No,
well,
not
sort
an old people.
That's what they want.
of responsible adults.
Okay, there's still councillor Wirtz. You done? Yeah.
I'd just like to seek some clarification because councillor Wirtz mentioned something there. Hasn't the Boys Club come to its end of life?
It's still standing.
Yeah, still up, right?
Might be perfect for you.
They were the idea with the Boys Club mural was to be on the netball court side, so it would be like a
So
I reckon
depreciation
inside the
schedule.
neck
so-
of
That's, thank you.
Okay, councillors,
green.
if you're happy, thank you. Councillor, all in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. I just do want to just mention that the Director of Infrastructure and Works has put his resignation in and is off to Orange. I think you've got one more meeting to be here.
April's my last meeting, yeah.
So,
Congratulations.
yeah, congratulations and acknowledge the hard work we've done.
Thank you.
Your legacy, you're leaving. Thank you.
I've enjoyed my stay here, councillors. I've learnt a hell of a lot about regional councils, and I think that's going to help me greatly in my move to Orange. So I thank you for all your support, and I think what this council's achieved in its term is amazing. It really is. It's an incredible amount of work that's been done in this term of council. So I think that's really something you can all be proud of. But thank you for all your support.
No, thank you.
Is it essentially the same role that you'll be doing?
Yeah, they've given me Orange Airport to look after. I'm not.
They've got a big budget.